Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the Real Forno Show. We have a lot to talk about tonight. We're going to talk about Kirk Cousins and having his discount rejected by the Minnesota Vikings. We're going to talk about the biggest needs still remaining on this team, a quick little mock draft roundup, a touch on my first big board that dropped this afternoon, along with a mock draft with our friends from the Draft Network, as that simulator is back up and running. Welcome to the Real Forno Show.
Welcome to the Real Forno Show. Managing editor of the USA Today's Vikings Wire. Betting and college football analysis for the Fantasy Points website. Publisher of Substack Run and Shooter. Host of The Good, The Bad, and The Hungry on the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network, as well as a founding member of Vikings First and SKOL.
And we are live with a nice little setup that Dave had from last week's show with Luke Braun. He's going to get that flippy dude right there. Perfect. I'm your host, Tyler Forness. With me, as always, is producer Dave. As I get the point correct in the top right corner, because that's where he always is. Dave, my friend, how are you?
I am good. Busy. Good.
Oh, we are now 31 days from the day one of the NFL draft, and I don't know if I could be more busy. I still want to get 50 more players watched, and I just finished my 50th player today, and I started in December, so we'll see how that ends up going, but luckily it's kind of a little calm as far as the Vikings free agency front. We're going to talk about that. But first, Dave, I think we need to talk about what the Vikings ended up doing with Kirk Cousins.
Okay.
And they declined a discount from Cousins. Now, I'm going to explain what that means because basically, if you're pro Cousins or pro get a new quarterback, you're going to be viewing this completely different. So let's just lay out the facts. Kirk Cousins wanted 24 and 25 fully guaranteed. The Vikings wanted to guarantee 2024. It was reported by the Star Tribune's Andrew Kramer on their podcast, Access Vikings, that Cousins was not asking for as much as Daniel Jones got. He was not, Dave, asking for $40 million. So he was offering some semblance of a discount. But the Vikings said no. And the reason why they said no is a theme that's come up multiple times when having the discussion about Kirk Cousins. It was not giving them any flexibility. There was no flexibility with giving Kirk Cousins all this fully guaranteed money. That's why they didn't do it. That's why they wanted to pursue the option of, hey, let's let it ride out, and then they restructured the contract. I can't blame Cousins for wanting to have 2025 fully guaranteed. He's going to be 37 years old. That's a very smart business move on his part. And wanting to just be like, you know what, if you're not going to do that, I'll hit free agency. That's fine. I think it's probably the best outcome for both parties and for what they want moving forward. Because obviously what they want is just two separate things right now.
If I was him and I'm coming up on the end of my career, yeah, I want to lock in. Sure thing, and the Vikings weren't up to that. They said no, and we are where we are. Now, what I find fascinating about this is this news hit yesterday. Well, the podcast came out on March 20th. It's been over a week, but people are just now catching that he had offered less than $40 million and just for the guarantees and what it means. And to me, it falls back to the Vikings have a plan. They're working the plan. Is Kirk Cousins part of that plan? No, not unless he wins the Super Bowl this year. So, and if he wins the Super Bowl, all bets are off. He'll get his money. And we'll all be happy. But until then, no. Now, it makes you wonder what is in the plan. Makes you speculate. Is it move up, grab a quarterback, in the first round? Is it wait to 23 to grab a quarterback? Is it wait to next year to grab a quarterback when we obviously will need one and the price for trading will get higher? It's interesting. I find it fascinating.
Dave, I find it fascinating too. There's a lot of things with this, and I think what's really intriguing is the fact that last year the Wilfs were very clear they did not want to take a step back at quarterback, and they're willing to ride it out with Kirk Cousins and see what the valley of the unknown is. Now, the unknown is a scary place for business. And let me explain why. It's
Oh,
not
and life in
necessarily that,
general.
yeah, it's not necessarily that you're going to be better. You don't know what you're going to be. You could be better. You could be worse. And there's a lot of what if scenarios in that. And because there's a lot of what if, it can be a path that a lot of people don't want to go down. It's a very, very conservative path to just stay with the known. When you're in high school, sometimes you don't want to break up with your boyfriend or girlfriend because it's just become such a place of reliance, such a comfort. But you just know that the relationship's not going to last. It's something that you know you're never going to get married, but you don't want to go without. You don't want to try something new because that new could be worse. And that's kind of the situation the Vikings have been in with Kirk Cousins, and especially last year. The Wilfs did not want to take a step back. They wanted to continue going forward with the known because the unknown has historically been a scary place for the Vikings at the quarterback position. Now, there's hope for Teddy Bridgewater going into 2016 to really take that step and be the guy. And I believe he would have been the guy that could have helped this team really project forward. But unfortunately, his knee went kerplunko, and we never got to see that. They traded for Sam Bradford. All the Denny Green years, it's always filled with stopgaps. It was the Jim McMahons, the Warren Moons. And then eventually you had developed Brad Johnson after 5 years from being a ninth-round pick, where he became the guy. You had Rich Gannon, Sean Salisbury. There was never, I'm going to draft this guy to be the guy. And I think that's been part of the problem here, right? Mm-hmm. They've always tried to go for the stopgap, the guy that they know, the devil you know versus the devil you don't. And the Wilfs kind of continued that last year. We know that there were trade offers for Kirk Cousins on the table from multiple franchises, including a capable starting quarterback and 2 second-round picks. That's a pretty dang good deal when you think about it, considering if the Vikings were to trade Cousins right now, would he net a first? I don't know that. And you can make the argument what his value should be. Mm-hmm. But what he would get on the market is a different conversation than what his value actually is because of the situation the Vikings are in. So Aaron Rodgers, it's pretty much a guarantee he's never playing with the Packers again. I don't think the Packers have a lot of leverage, even though Rodgers said, hey, I'm going to the Jets. You know why I don't think they have a lot of leverage? Because they've basically said that he is not playing for the Packers again. Gutekunst can say all he wants. Oh, all options are open. No, he ain't playing for the Packers again. The Packers can either take what the Jets offer or just lose him to retirement. So in theory, you'd rather take the assets, right? Mm-hmm. Like, that's kind of the position the Vikings are in. If they want to trade Cousins, it's going to be, what are teams offering you? And you just kind of have to take it. Sometimes you have Rick Spielman, who ended up getting great deals for both Stephon Diggs and Percy Harvin, where it was a first and multiple picks after that. That's making the best of a bad situation. I don't think you're getting that kind of a return for Kirk Cousins. And because you're not getting that kind of return, it can make a trade difficult. And like, this is kind of ended up being the best case scenario. He's just going to play in the last year of his contract. And
well, I heard one trade scenario today that I found interesting.
Fire away. What is it?
Oh, not that one. Lamar Jackson, right? And I just had up Lamar's tweets from earlier today that he had told the Ravens he wanted traded as of March 2nd. And of course, today is the 27th. So almost 3 weeks later and still nothing. And part of that is because Lamar Jackson refuses to get a qualified representative. He supposedly got one now, sort of ish. But the trade was that because they're offering, the whole deal is 2 first rounders. If somebody gives them a contract and Baltimore doesn't match it, uh, they owe that Baltimore 2 first rounders. That if the Vikings were to offer that contract, that Kirk Cousins, once he agrees, may be part of that trade, and it just goes down to like a first and a third. But I don't know if that is going to be the case. We may be dreaming. Vikings are second per Vegas in the odds to get Lamar Jackson. Titans are first. They got the better odds. Uh, it's I don't know. It's Lamar's known. Speaking of known, a known commodity. He's been an MVP. He has won same amount of playoff games as Kirk Cousins has. We know his capabilities. He is still under 30. I think he's 28. He still has a lot of prime years ahead of him. So that makes sense. But there's also the cost. And that's where everybody balks. He'll be taking up a ginormous chunk of the roster. And we know SKOL Mafia Duo Day, he comes up. Who does he have on as his avatar? Justin Jefferson. Justin Jefferson will take a chunk of that roster. And then we know Christian Darrisaw will take a chunk of that roster. So it's going to be hard, even with cap going up, to pay for all that and to stay competitive. It's an interesting thought. I don't know that it's going to happen, but it's an interesting thought. My first choice is pretty much the same as Justin said on his show the other night. We get our guy in the draft. If it costs us to move up, we move up, we get him. Whoever that is. If it's Levis, it's Levis. Anderson would be sweet, but he's going to be gone. Anyways, and secondly, option B is if the Lamar thing came through. I do not like having to wait till next year to solve a quarterback problem when we could do it this year and get it resolved, whether it be somebody sitting behind Kirk Cousins for a year or Lamar Jackson switching his shade of purple. Either way.
So let's talk about this. And first, I want to give a shout out to friend of the show, Lauren Odessa. Happy 327 to you too, as well. Along with that, Dave, let's talk about Lamar Jackson because I want to dispel a couple narratives. Oh, he's always hurt. Yeah, he's been dinged up a little bit the last 2 years, but I think this past year he got hurt and he did not want to injure himself further when he could have played because of the situation that he had with the Baltimore Ravens. And he just said, you know what? I ain't going to play. I don't blame him. Like, I really don't. He's felt disrespected by how they've kind of treated negotiations. He's been very frustrated, and that's fine. I'll say this. I've seen a lot of people be like, oh, he's been hurt the last 2 years. I don't want him. Look, we have been spoiled with Kirk Cousins not missing a single game due to injury. I don't believe he's left a game with an injury outside of one play. And I think that was only because his helmet got knocked off. And that's a different thing. That's not necessarily injury. That's player safety. And that's fine. Look, here's the thing with Lamar. He's a former MVP. He's still playing well, and everything needs to be contextualized. You have to contextualize stats. There are so many bad faithers on the internet, so many, Dave, that are going to look at you and tell you, oh, Lamar Jackson's passer rating in the fourth quarter is bad. Why is it bad? What's the why? Because I'll tell you this, the why is always going to be more important than the stat itself. Why? Like, there are people arguing, hey, Kirk Cousins at garbage time. Like, he plays so well when the Vikings are down by like 3 touchdowns. And like the Atlanta game a couple years ago, 2020, when he threw for like a billion yards and like 3 touchdowns at the end of that game, but the game was already out of reach. Like, it's that kind of thing. Like, you have to contextualize the why. And I don't think Kirk Cousins is a garbage time quarterback. I really don't. He has thrived in garbage time, but he thrives so much out of it. Like, you can't make that argument in good faith. You just can't. Um, Big thing for me is if you can't explain the why behind the stat, then making the argument for the stat just really doesn't make any sense. Lamar Jackson has had one really good receiver his entire career, Mark Andrews. Outside of that, Dave, he's had a bunch of jabronis, a word that The Rock used to use in the heyday of WWF, the Attitude Era. He has not had
Jabroni's been around a lot
Yeah.
longer than that.
Oh, yeah. As I have Odie chewing on my chair again, you might as well just gift him the $700 chair at this point. It's... You have to contextualize, because if he's not throwing to any really quality receivers on the outside, plus Greg Roman, tremendous at developing a running game, tremendous at maximizing a quarterback with a mobile skill set. Just look at what he did for Colin Kaepernick. Look at what he's done to spur Lamar Jackson's career early on. Here's part of the problem. If you're not playing within that offense and you have to just go drop back, Greg Roman's passing concepts stink. They are bad. They are elementary, rudimentary, and they don't help anybody succeed. You get him in an offense that will maximize him as a passer and maximize him as a runner. And you know why it really intrigues me here, Dave? I think Kevin O'Connell would be able to do both of those things. Maximize what he does as a runner and as a passer. I selfishly want him to end up as a San Francisco 49er, because Kyle Shanahan's sicko brain is going to go bonanza utilizing him in all the creative running plays, all the creative passing schemes down the field. Like, Lamar Jackson, it would put that offense on like cocaine.
On an obscene level.
Like 1980s Miami Vice cocaine. Scarface. Like, that's how it would maximize what he is already able to do. And I really love that idea. It's never going to happen. And I need to just come to grips with that. And to me, that's the most frustrating thing. It'll never happen. It should happen. Oh, Chris,
thanks, Chris.
You've been here. You've been here, and half of them are your fault. Like, you know. And I think understanding why some of his struggles have been there. It's not all him. He's good in the pocket. He makes sound decisions. He's not always perfectly accurate, but he definitely throws it in the vicinity, and a better receiver is going to help him out. Like, if Kirk Cousins didn't have Adam Thielen, Stephon Diggs, Justin Jefferson, TJ Hawkinson, imagine how much worse the stats are going to be. Like, if you flip-flop those two players, where Lamar Jackson played with the 2022 Vikings, Kirk Cousins played with the 2022 Ravens, who's going to be better? Situation matters, context matters. And if you genuinely, after exploring all of that, don't want to invest all the assets to go get Lamar Jackson, I respect that. That's fair, because committing that kind of draft capital and that kind of financial burden when there's a potential to get that guy and take that risk in the draft, that's a very fair argument. And I will gladly listen to you wanting to make that or not wanting to do that. But at the end of the day, Dave, some of the narratives about Jackson are just a bunch of crap. And you have to put context behind every single step, or they're worthless. They really are.
Well, Vegas came out with our win totals this week, and it was 8.5, 500. If the Vikings were to trade for Lamar Jackson, I would bet those would jump by at least 3 games. That we would instantly be considered contenders in the NFC, along with San Francisco and Philadelphia. But that's just me. So, um,
Yeah.
actually, Kirk's numbers weren't that bad without J.J. Diggs, Thielen, or Hawk. Are you
Yeah,
talking
but
about at Washington?
yeah, well, look at the weapons he had at Washington. He had a Deshaun Jackson in his prime, Jordan Reed in his prime, Vernon Davis at the very tail end of his prime, Jamison Crowder, Pierre Garcon. He had dudes. Like, and that's the thing. Some quarterbacks, the best quarterbacks, in my opinion, the most important trait a quarterback has is how they elevate talent around them. John Elway barely had shit until he won 2 Super Bowls.
Mm-hmm.
Like Bobby Humphrey, Mark Jackson, like you're not talking like this high-end talent, Dave. You're just not. Dan Marino, like Mark Super Duper and Mark Clayton were good. Neither one of them were greats or Hall of Famers, but you know what Dan Marino did? Elevated. Tom
Mm-hmm.
Brady. Look at what Tom Brady was able to do with nothing around him, and then look at what he was able to do when he got elite talent. He broke NFL records consistently. Like, it's about how you elevate those around you. They are going to elevate you, but it should be a symbiotic relationship, and it should not just be my receivers elevate me. You should be able to be elevating them as well. And you also have to have a good environment. Vikings have the best environment in football right now.
Mm-hmm.
Where the culture is with those NFLPA team report cards, they were tied for 5th or better in every single category with their lowest grade in A-. So you have to understand that with quarterbacks, you got to be able. It's got to be a symbiotic relationship. Now, let's read off some of the names that Lamar Jackson was throwing to in his MVP season. Other than Mark Andrews, who had a team high 852 yards on 64 catches, the receivers: Hollywood Brown, 46 for 584. Willie Snead, 31 for 339. Seth Roberts, 21 for 271. Miles Boykin, 13 for 198. And then Chris Moore, 1 for 6.
Mm-hmm.
Chris Moore was 3 for 21. Otherwise, you have Hayden Hurst, who had 30 catches. Nick Boyle, both those tight ends, 31 catches. Patrick Richard, fullback / tight end / defensive tackle, 8 catches. And then you had your running backs. He's not throwing to juggernauts. He's not. And he's throwing to jabronis. Like, you have to contextualize that. Take that into consideration when you're looking at his stats. This is why you have to watch the film. This is why, like, I am not on some high platform on a pedestal or anything because I watch a lot of film. If you want to learn about this stuff, go watch it. Ask questions. Try and learn this stuff. Make an informed opinion. Talking about stuff like this you should utilize the same process as you do when you vote for president. You should ask the questions. Okay, what like you ask for president, where do they stand on the issues? What kind of credibility do they have? Do I like the content of their character? And you're asking all those questions, and then you make an informed decision. A lot of times it aligns within your party, but sometimes the candidate on the other side is so good you jump. But you make an informed decision. With stuff like this, do the same thing. Ask yourself, okay, how does Lamar Jackson perform within the structure of the offense? What is he being asked to do? Is the talent around him helping him? How is the scheme helping him? When you have those answers, Dave, then you'll be able to be informed and you'll be able to talk about this with a lot of confidence. The problem is you're getting a lot of propaganda from both sides, but seek out the answers. If you disagree with me, that's fine. I'd love disagreement. You know why? Because we can have a great conversation and we can learn from each other. And a lot of people I like to talk to are those that are smarter than me because I learned things and I see their process. Or even those who may not be smarter than me or as educated as me in a football sense, but take the time out and watch it and make their own opinions and then come to a forum and talk about it. Because I think that, Dave, is what's really important here. You're taking the time to get to know what's going on, and you're making that effort instead of just spouting out, oh, I saw a tweet where Kirk Cousins had a 10-point better passer rating than Lamar Jackson in this situation. Okay, why? Why? Look at the why. That's what's important. And I think if you want to know about Lamar Jackson and you want to know why he should be the Minnesota Vikings quarterback, go ask yourself those questions and go watch it. Go watch him. See who he's playing with and see why he only completed 62% of his passes. Now, you're not going to necessarily have time to watch every game. Go to PFF. Look at how they charted his 3 best games and 3 worst games. Use that as your baseline and go watch him. You'll get a sense of the good and the bad that way. I don't think PFF is a perfect formula, but they're going to give you a baseline of what you should be watching or what is going on. That's how I do a lot of my scouting reports, because I'll look at what games looked best on the box score and with PFF, and I'll watch those, and I'll look at the worst ones. I'll watch those too, because you want to get the full picture. Just know who you're getting your information from when you're talking about stuff like this, and who has an agenda and who doesn't. My agenda is to just be as informed as possible. And I will change my opinion. Everybody who watches this show knows that. I changed my tune on Kirk Cousins last year. You know why? He started playing really freaking good. And he was doing things that he wasn't doing. Because, Dave, when we talked last offseason, what was the big thing I had? I was worried he wasn't going to be able to evolve into the type of quarterback that Kevin O'Connell wanted him to be and be aggressive when things weren't perfect. And you know what? He was aggressive. Mm-hmm. I was wrong. And
yeah, I was saying, no, he can't change. And he said, no, he's 34 years old. Okay. He's going to be what he was. Nah,
I want to correct you. I never said he couldn't. I had very serious doubts he could. And I think in that line of thinking, I was fair, and that line of thinking was correct. Kirk proved me wrong, and I give him all the credit in the world for that. He did what I didn't think was what he would be able to do.
All up until the
good on him. 8th. But listen, I could go on this diatribe. Just let's end it with this, and then we have a few things that we need to get to tonight, Dave. Make sure that whoever you follow as an analyst, they're informed. They're going to approach things with as little bias as possible, and they're just going to try and get the information. And 3, educate yourselves and have the conversation. Have one with me. My DMs are open. Come have a conversation. It's a great time. I love talking football. And you know what? I guarantee you, there are going to be things I'm going to disagree with you about. And I'm going to tell you why I disagree. And I'm going to point to evidence of that. But I'm also going to be like, you know what? You're right. And I will change my opinion based on being presented with new information. Because that's how you have to approach this. Nothing is fluid. Nothing is certain. Everything is fluid. You have to be willing to adapt your opinion. And Stampede's like, I have way too reasonable takes. Yeah, well, that's why I'm, not Stephen A. Smith. I'm actually informed and reasonable, because I'm just going to be my genuine self, and you're either going to like it or you don't. And I am very glad that you all are here. Dave, we need to transition talking about other things.
And you wanted this after 2 weeks of free agency, you wanted to talk about the state of the Vikings roster right now.
Yes, and there are 5 needs that I have identified, Dave, that I believe are the biggest needs at this point in the process. Hi, Odie. Odie had to lick him out of peanut butter, and now he's carrying it around like a prized trophy. He's a good boy. He's a very good boy. But I think this is really important. I'm going to pull it up on my other monitor, which is going to look like I'm looking away from the camera because I am. Um, let's
Eventually, we'll
talk
get
about these.
two cameras each, and we can switch when I look at my other monitor, or when Tyler looks at his
Okay.
other monitor.
All right, let's talk. So, the fifth most important need is a surprising one, Dave. And you know what? If you're good, we may go over an hour on this show because this is honestly just good conversation, and
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to stop good conversation. Fifth, I have edge rusher
Mm-hmm.
as the fifth most important need on this show. And hear me out. We have really good edge rushers, Dave. Here's part of the problem with edge rushers, as far as where they sit on this team. We don't know what the future is. We really don't. Here's what I wrote. The edge position is currently flush with talent. Danielle Hunter, Zadarius Smith, and Marcus Davenport are all starting caliber players. DJ Wanham is a good rotational player, as is Patrick Jones II. The real question is who will be on this team next year. Smith and Jones II do have one more year on their contracts, but Hunter, Davenport, and Wanham are all set to be free agents next year. What is the plan at the position going to be? An extension for Hunter is likely, with his cash flow this year only set to be a shade under $5 million, but they need to work on fortifying the position. One thing to monitor is Wanham's status with the team, as it could be in doubt with his cap hit at $2.93 million. Don't worry, Justin. I will pull Odie up as soon as we get closer to the end of the show. I promise. Dave, I think edge is, we need to really talk about it. This is a position that's massively in flux. I think the idea here is, one, keep an eye out for Danielle Hunter to be a trade chip to move up. I'm not saying it's going to happen. But I will also say this. It's not a nothing burger that they haven't extended his contract, and if you trade him, I'm going to pull up over the cap because I think all those guarantees end up transferring over to the new team in a trade. But otherwise, if you release him, it's like an $18 million dead cap hit because of how they've structured the void years, yada, yada, bing, bang. But if you were to trade him pre-June 1st, so that would be during or before the draft. Actually, the Vikings would incur an $18 million dead cap hit. It would not change, which I find interesting that the base salary wouldn't just transfer over. But look, Danielle Hunter, he's 29 years old. He's still playing great football. Like, yeah, it's a big deal. Oh yeah, because there's almost $12 million in dead cap in the next 2 years,
That will
and
be
then
accelerated.
7.6 million this year. Look, I would love to get an OD cam. We'll see. I don't know how that would work with Dave and as far as our setup, but if we can get an OD cam, I will get one. Dave, what do you think about edge?
I agree with you. We got some great edge right now, but it's relatively temporary, and we'd love to have somebody ready to step in if one of those temporary solutions stepped away. I would like a long-term extension for Hunter. I think 3 to 5 years would be fine. Take him through the end of his career. Smith, I'd like to keep happy and on his contract. And the new kid from the Saints, I'd like to see involved, move down inside quite a bit more, and then outside and part of the rotation, and just make living hell out of quarterbacks. But like you said, 3 of the guys, including we're talking Wanham and Jones, 3 of those are free agents next year. Smith already wants to leave, and he may be a trade candidate, and that puts you at 4. That leaves you 1, and that isn't enough. We need some high quality, so it needs to be paid attention to. One way or another, lock them down financially, and preferably that and draft the next guys, because we're going to need the next guys to come up. But we do have so many needs, and we'll get into more. I'm sure one of them's a cornerback or 2.
Yeah. There is. Fourth, I have defensive line. So here's the interesting thing about the defensive line, Dave. It's mostly the same. The only major difference is you swap out Dean Lowry for Dalvin Tomlinson. So
Where I see Davenport taking a lot of those snaps as well.
So they announced him as an outside linebacker. I'm not convinced of anything yet. I genuinely do not know. I do not know how they're going to use him. I wrote a long piece on zone coverage about how
which makes more money.
Use him. Edge.
He may have wanted to be labeled that. Hey, if somebody could be labeled a quarterback and make quarterback money and play punter, they would. It's all a matter of label and where they're categorized. That's where you get the arguments between guys that are tweeners. Why don't they get like a tight end who lines up outside all the time? Why isn't he getting wide receiver pay? Well, tight end pay is a lot cheaper, and they want to keep him that way. So it may be that, I don't know, but I do think Davenport will move inside in the Tomlinson role, especially on pass rushing downs. But that's me. That's how I'd utilize him. If I had him, Smith, and Hunter, that would be my primary three.
Yeah. I'm very intrigued to see what happens with this group. I'm not ruling out defensive line in the first round. And I think that's going to be really interesting. But they have a capable group, and I think that Flores is going to deploy these guys a lot better. And you're going to see growth from guys like Esezi Otomewo, Kyrus Tonga. Harrison Phillips is going to be put into more advantageous positions this year. And I don't think Dean Lowry is a bad player. He's 28 years old, and he's played well for the Packers. He had one outlier year. Other than that, he's been solid, and he got solid money. I was a little annoyed about it at the time, but I think they're going to be fine. Mary, I wouldn't worry about Davenport. I will send you the article so you can kind of see why I'm not worried about Davenport. I think he's going to be really good. Third biggest need, cornerback. I'm not so worried at the top. I'm worried about depth. I want a true nickel. I want one more guy to compete as a starter on the outside, and I want to bring in a rookie. I don't want to bring in multiple rookies. You have two guys who basically have rookie experience in a Caleb Evans and Andrew Booth Jr. You have Byron Murphy Jr., but that's it. You chose not to re-sign Duke Shelley, which you can argue the merits of giving him an extra $100,000, but there is a lot of moving parts with this group. I want two more guys before we enter the draft. I don't want to feel pigeonholed that you have to take one at the top. There are guys in round 3 that you can get that can be starters in the NFL. This is a stupid class. A very stupid class. Yes. I have I just released my first big board where it's only the top 50 players, and I have only watched these guys in full. So I have not watched any offensive linemen because the Vikings probably won't take one. And I have not watched a couple of the stud defensive tackles. I haven't watched Jalen Carter, Kalijah Cansey yet. But what I'm trying to do is watch positions that the Vikings are probably going to target. So I'm working through running backs right now. I've graded 12 cornerbacks, Dave. 10 of them have at least a second round grade. The 2 third-round grades are at the very top of the third round. So basically all of them I would consider top 70 picks. That's pretty good. Like, that's a pretty dang good cornerback class. You can get a guy in round 3. A DJ Turner, a Kai Blue Kelly, or one of my personal favorite players in this draft, Darius Rush. I love Darius Rush. South Carolina kid. He loses constantly at the line of scrimmage, but he's so athletic and smart at how he makes up space that he wins the majority of his reps anyways. It's the most absurd thing, but he's very, very good. How do you feel about corner, Dave?
Oh, I agree with your thinking. I think we have 5 or 6 on the team, and a couple of them are like who, and we need depth. We need at least 10 in the room to fill out the 90-man roster, and we're not even close. That is something that we need. I would love to find a true nickel like you that could play. Whether it could be Bynum coming down, it could be Seam coming down, somebody like that. But I would like to know that, yes, our nickel is this and they are competent, because we have nobody with nickel experience except for the guy we just got and what he's going to play on the outside. So they're hard to find, and good ones are even harder to find. But we need a good one because, like you've said many times before, the defensive backfield is a weak link system, and they will target whatever that weak link is. And so you need to get good across the board. It doesn't have to be great, just good. You can't have, great, good, bad, because the bad guy is going to be the one that gets picked on constantly. So we need one.
And this is why I've talked a lot about the approach of how the Bengals have targeted their room. They don't have a great corner. They have a bunch of guys that don't stink. And I think that's really important. Tony, linebacker actually didn't make my top 5, but I would probably put it at 6 for what it's worth. My number 2 need is finding a wide receiver 2. I don't believe in KJ Osborne as a wide receiver 2. I just don't. I think he's a capable wide receiver 3, and you need to find that alpha on the outside to really take this offense to a new level. That's not KJ Osborne, and it's not an insult on him. He has done a tremendous job of working his way up from being a return-only guy to being a legitimate NFL wide receiver. Somebody's going to give him $10 million next year in free agency, and I don't think that should be the Vikings. I really don't. I think you need to find that guy on the outside. It's one of those things that I talked about in my mock draft. I had them taking Quentin Johnston from TCU, who I think can be an alpha. I think he can grow to be an alpha. I don't necessarily believe that you have to have an alpha, but if you can get a guy who can be, you take them and you take the risk. And he's so great at attacking down the field, Dave. He is also great at winning after the catch. Get him in space. He's a big body guy, and he runs through tackles. He also has good long speed.
Mm-hmm.
Let him do the things he's great at while you develop the rest of his game. If you don't take a quarterback, I think that's the play. And I don't think it's absurd to talk about. I think wide receiver needs to be a focus for this team.
And we all know Flowers has been mocked to us a bazillion times at 23.
Yeah.
However, now he seems to be moving up the board a little bit.
So, if you have checked it out, I do a mock draft roundup every Monday. So it got released this morning. Zay Flowers was picked 5 times. 5 different times by mock drafts in the industry. Overall, Zay Flowers has been mocked to the Vikings 11. So basically half of the times that he was mocked to the Vikings. And I do this by industry mocks. I'm picky about my industry mocks, and a great tool to use is Mock Draft Database. Search it in Google. It's the first option. He basically takes everybody's mock drafts and puts them in one location to make it easy to see. So I will take all the industry mocks from like ESPN, the Draft Network, CBS, PFF, and then a few sites that I find to be really credible, or people that I find to be really credible. I don't take them from just anyone. I don't. Because I don't think that, like Walter Football, I don't touch it. Because I don't think they're credible. And when you look at all these things, Dave, when you look at how they're drafting, receivers become a big one. Same with quarterback. Will Levis, and if the Vikings take Hendon Hooker, I will cry. We will be doing a live spot of some form on the draft. When we finalize our draft plans, you will know, but there will be content from us during the draft. I promise you that. When you look at all those things, Dave, it's going to be interesting. Naylor, he's at least a year away. Could he be a wide receiver too? Maybe, but he was a 6th-round pick. I'm not holding my breath. And that's
It
not
would
an
be a
insult.
nice development, and maybe it can happen. But yes, we liked what we saw in the little bits of them last season.
Mm-hmm. I liked it. I absolutely did. Let's go to the top one, and we all know what that is, Dave. It's the quarterback of the future. Now, I left this very open-ended. Oh, shoot. Odie, you can't chew on that, bud. There's a nice bottle of pea cleaner.
Uh-huh.
You can't eat that, Odie. You'll hurt yourself. You'll turd. Yeah, I know it's been a while. You want to go, but we have to stay in here for a little longer, okay?
MWO, I'm assuming JMS is John Michael Schmitz.
Yes.
I'd love him too, but
quarterback of the future, Dave.
Mm-hmm.
That could be Kirk Cousins. That could be Lamar Jackson. They need to determine who they're going to move forward with in the future. They do.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I want to address this. Bob makes a good point that Diggs was a 5th-round pick. I wrote an article this weekend for Vikings Wire where I said he was the best pick the Vikings made since the year 2000. The best pick because it was value and what you got from that player. But it was also context, and this is why I keep talking about context, guys. He had some soft tissue injuries at Maryland. He was a 5-star recruit who decided to stay in state to be close to family. You're talking about a guy who had soft tissue injuries in a loaded wide receiver class, arguably the best wide receiver class of all time. Guys are going to fall, and you're going to get value. The Vikings pounced on that value, and good on them. But in the same light that we just can't expect a 3rd-round edge to become Danielle Hunter, we can't expect a 5th-rounder to become Stephon Diggs. It's great. Try it again, but don't rely on it. That's kind of where I'm at, and this is why I talk about context meaning everything. But the Vikings need to pick a quarterback of the future. Go with it. Pick a route, and stick with it until that route tells you, nope, we can't do this anymore. A la Christian Ponder early 2013 when he got benched for Matt Castle. Like, just pick a route. That's what I want to see this team do, okay? Now, Dave, do you have any final thoughts on the team needs? Was there anything I missed in the top 5 that you would have put there?
No, I'm good with that. You've identified the major ones.
Mm-hmm. Davey,
now somebody might put interior O-line on that list, but I don't think they're going to go that route. I think they're going to be happy with what they have and maybe get low rounder as a build and project, but I do not see them going high on interior O-line at all.
Say
as much as I'd like John Michael Schmitz or the kid from Wisconsin.
Yeah,
at center, I just don't see it happening. There's the OD's a good boy.
He's a very good boy. I want to answer Davey's comment about Bo Levi Mitchell. I liked Bo Levi Mitchell. I thought he could be a starter in the NFL. Problem was, they ended up signing Kirk Cousins, and they told him, no, you're not going to compete for the starting job. And he's like, okay, I want out. He went back to Canada. He's like 40 now. But I thought he could have been really good. It's unfortunate. Yeah, that's a good boy, Odie. Okay, so let's talk about real quick, and then I'm going to give Dave some time to load up the Draft Network simulator. I released my first big board this afternoon, Dave. It's going to be a lot different than most people's. One, because I haven't watched everybody yet. I just haven't had the time to dedicate as much to draft stuff as I normally would, because I'm still getting used to Vikings Wire as far as what my responsibilities are. And 2, I have different opinions. I like this receiver class more than most people. Quentin Johnston is my number 2 player right now. Behind CJ Stroud is my number 1. Like, I really like this receiver class, but I don't have anybody graded over 90. CJ Stroud is my highest graded player at like 88. It's good boy, Odie. Yay, Odie. Lauren agrees. Lauren is smart. Be like Lauren. I highly recommend you go look at it and don't just be like, oh, he had him here. He's dumb. I have scouting reports for everything. I'm going to tell you what I think and break it down so you can determine,
And
like, for yourself, like, oh,
it's a quality of player. It's not necessarily who's going to be drafted where, right?
yep. It's just my take on this class. And I'm lower on Will Anderson than other people. And I think he could be really good, but he's not a generational edge rusher like the Bosas were, like Myles Garrett was. He's just very good, and there's nothing wrong with that. Right, Odie?
Mm-hmm.
He's a good boy. The people love you, sweet boy.
Uh-huh.
All right, Dave,
are you ready to mock?
Odie is. Yay!
Welcome to the Real Forno Show's Mock Draft Mondays.
Who will the Vikings pick, and who's your favorite choice?
All right. You're going to have to say goodbye to Odie. I know Lauren made him her first round pick. And he'd be my number 1 overall pick. But I'm going to set him back down and hopefully he stops biting at my feet. Right, Odie? Say bye-bye, Odie. Bye.
Bye, Odie.
Okay, bye. Oh, good boy. He's a good boy, Odie.
Vikings.
All right. Dave, we have 6. Yeah, how many rounds did you do?
6.
Perfect. I was going to say that. Let's do it.
It's been a while since I've used this mock draft.
So it's going to be different.
Mm-hmm.
But
and it was different than last year.
Mm-hmm. There is a timer.
Yes, and they will select if you bust the 2 minutes.
Yes.
I tried it.
It's pretty nifty. I like this. Plus PFF is now charging people, which I'll be honest is they just started doing it. Probably smart. If you think about it, Dave. Well, yeah. I think people were they were complaining about it too much, and I think a lot of it had to do with the fact that there was no Draft Network simulator yet. Oh, Chris, my wife doesn't watch these. You don't have to worry.
Are you ready to start?
Yep, fire away.
Start the draft.
Okay. I cannot see the board very well because it's blurry on my end. I'm going to...
Why didn't it start?
It did. We're on the clock.
Ah. Shall I pause it?
Yeah, pause it.
Paused. All right. Available. Bijan Robinson. Jackson Smith the Jigba. I'll blow this up. Make it easier.
Well, it's just it's blurry on my end, which stinks, but I can't control that, unfortunately.
I think it's the browser you're using. Anyways, Brian Branch, Cam Smith, John Michael Schmitz, Khalija Cansey, Julius Brents, DeJuan Jones, Jordan Edison. That's a long way for Edison to drop. Jahmyr Gibbs, Zay Flowers, even longer. Keely Ringo, Emmanuel Forbes, Anton Harrison, Dante Banks. Or let's see. Let's look at...
The quarterbacks are gone. That much we know.
That's what I was betting on, that they were Here we go. Let me switch this real quick. Boom. We have a trade. We have a trade offer.
Okay. Oh, so here's the weird thing. You really can't. Drafted. They don't offer you trades. They tell you who's interested, and then you have to propose it. So it puts everything in your hands.
Okay.
So I think what we're going to do here, Dave, is let's see who's available to trade with. Let's talk about trading back, because I don't think there's any must-have player at this position. Oh, they actually did offer. 31. What do we get to go back? 62? Man, I wish it wasn't blurry on my end. This stinks.
We get pick 31. We get 31. We get a round 4 and 24 and a round 6 and 24 for the Eagles to move up. Eagles get our pick and send those. That's the Eagles.
Wait,
so
both the round 4 and round 6 are in 2024?
Right.
Oh, I'm not doing that. What's the other offer?
Okay, reject. Well, don't have to reject yet. Look. The other offer is from the Texans.
Okay.
We received their round 3 and their round 7 and their round 3 and their round 4.
No, I'm not doing that either. We're going to want to stay.
Reject. Okay. Who on this list do you want to snag up?
Okay. I'm waiting actually, Dave, until it's actually very clear for me on the YouTube. So I've got the YouTube stream up. So I'm actually going to look at the roster of players available while we kind of chat. Now
Robinson, Smith, Ajigba, Branch, Smith, John Michael Spitz.
Okay, so I have been a big proponent of don't draft Jackson Smith and Jigba, but I'm going to try and do this with a little bit of realism. I think the Vikings would take Jackson Smith and Jigba here. So let's do Jackson Smith and Jigba, and so you have to unpause the draft first.
Yeah.
Let's do Jackson Smith and Jigba, and you're going to have both him and Jefferson just going berserk with option routes. And that's how we're going to play that. And now you have your wide receiver 2, your number 2 need filled. And I think that is a huge, huge plus here, Dave. Now we're going to see. I'm just waiting for the actual YouTube stream to catch up here. Yeah, I wish that Ecamm was a little nicer and wasn't blurry on my end, but I am not complaining because the finished product is good. All right. So we got tight end Luke Musgrave, corner DJ Turner, corner Kai Blue Kelly, safety Sidney Brown, interior lineman / center Luke Weipler, linebacker Diane Henley, linebacker Henry Toto. Of these guys, Kai Blue Kelly's the one.
Okay.
I really like Kai Blue Kelly.
So we'll
talented player.
Our corner. Draft.
Davey.
There you go.
Dave, we're going to talk about this.
It drafted 2.
What? What are you
I may have double because it moved so fast. I'm going to slow it down on the next one. It moves so fast.
Paused. Who'd you pick?
Kai Terrell Clark, corner Louisville.
Well, I guess we're going with that. There are a lot of corners available here at 160, which is one of the reasons why you don't have to force it early. Vikings have not taken a quarterback yet, and this is where we're going to take that shot. We're going to take Jake Haener from Fresno State. Jake Haener might not have a future as an NFL starter. At the very worst.
No, we just took a running back. Never mind. Dave's blown this one.
Sean Tucker?
Yeah.
I love Sean Tucker, but he got flagged for a medical injury, so he has got to go back to Indianapolis this week. He had a knee injury last year that unfortunately went kerplunko.
Dave will get better on this next week. I guarantee it. I'll practice during the week.
Okay, so we got our wide receiver. Chris, no, you can't go backwards. Kind of stinks, but it is what it is. Of these guys, I would consider going wide receiver one more time. And I'm looking at Bryce Ford Wheaton from West Virginia. He's a guy that I think is a sleeper. He's a very talented player. He's a big boy. He's like 6'4", 220, ran a 4.38, jumped out of the building. I think he's a tremendous guy to bring in, and I think he could be an X for you long term. So you talk about Jackson Smith and Jigba, using him and Justin Jefferson, alternating the slot and the Z. Then you have a true X in Bryce Ford Wheaton. Now you have size in your room, something you didn't have before. You were relying on your tight end position to really be that size. So you're going to go down. He's right there, Dave. Bryce Ford Wheaton, 163. That's the guy we're going to take. And then that's going to be our draft. 2 wide receivers, 2 corners, and a running back. Because of a little misclicks, not exactly how this would have gone, but you know what? I don't think this is incredibly unrealistic either. I think this is semi-realistic, Dave. Lauren, handed the wrong card. It's shades of 2003 all over again.
Yeah, Dave screwed up.
That's okay, though, because it presents a different situation that in theory could happen, and that's the whole point of a mock draft. I think this is good. I think you're talking about a mock draft that has 2 wide receivers. It has 2 corners. 2 corners, which at this point, not unlikely. I like it. I think it's good. I would be content with this draft. I think that there are elements where we could have done a little better.
The minions would riot if this was the draft. This is my fault.
No, let them riot. Who cares? Who cares? Let them riot, because you know what? I'm going to be fine. Because I like the talent they picked. And to me, that's the most important thing.
Okay.
Talent. Dave, it was a good show. I'm going to get people kind of prepped for what is coming with Vikings First and SKOL. Tomorrow at 1 p.m. Central Time. If you are available to join us live, great. Otherwise, it'll be on demand within minutes of us finishing. NFL.com's Eric Edholm, who you might remember from the show last year, is going to join, and we're going to talk quarterbacks. That part is new to Dave. He's going to get a write-up tonight to make things easier in the morning.
Good.
And then on Wednesday night, Cole Thompson from Sports Illustrated, who covers the SEC, Texas A&M, and the Houston Texans, is going to join us. We're going to talk wide receivers. We're going to get pretty nitty-gritty, and it's going to be a really good time. I have some other guests lined up, too. Once those dates get confirmed, you will hear about it. I'm having conversations back and forth, including with somebody who would be our highest profile guest ever. But nothing is finished yet, so I don't want to give away the milk before the cow. I will say this. We do have a confirmation from the Philadelphia Inquirer's Devin Jackson, who is one of the smartest minds when it comes to anything NFL or NFL draft. He will be on Wednesday, I believe that's April 6th.
April 5th, 6th, somewhere there. Yeah.
Well, it's the day that you're not doing your fun thing. So
yeah,
whatever
my
day
fun
that
thing is the
Wednesday.
4th, so it's the 5th.
Okay. That will be in the afternoon as well. Now, if you can join us live, that's great. But the nice part is all of this will be on demand, and all of this will be podcasted. And as soon as we have all of that finalized, we are going to share that information with you, and you will be able to listen to it. And that is what's going to be the most important thing. It's going to be available for you to catch at your convenience. And we're going to have more guests. I have a lot of high-profile names that I am having conversations with. We are going to have a lot of fun. Plus, any news breaks, we're going to jump on. When the NFL draft comes around, we will have some semblance of audio video for you. But
guaranteed. And we're going to be building that up with our partners at Fans First Sports Network, too. Mm-hmm. We are going to be bouncing all our assets across the NFL, all 32 teams at FFSN, to bring you the best draft coverage around, period. And Tyler's going to be all part of that.
Yes, absolutely. Listen, this is going to be a really fun journey. I greatly appreciate every one of you joining here tonight. Continue to join us as we look to bring you the best in Vikings coverage. And that includes VikingsWire.usatoday.com. That includes my bi-weekly show, Purple Access, on the Purple Daily YouTube channel with SKOL North. That includes Dave's Two Old Bloggers every Saturday afternoon with him and Darren. That includes everything that we do. We are striving to be the best and the most honest. And I am going to have a hopping good day, Lauren. I hope you do too. In the meantime, from Dave, I'm Tyler. SKOL Vikings, baby.
SKOL Vikings! Like, subscribe, and ring the bell to get notifications. It helps us grow this community that we all love, our Minnesota Vikings. And on behalf of Tyler Forness and myself, Dave Stefano, thank you so dearly for watching The Real Forno Show. SKOL, everyone!